aquarianradio.com.
Aloha, this is Enki. You know me as Aquarius, and this is our age, the Sata Yuga. Time to celebrate with us. We have programs on all chakra tantra, love styles and relationship choices, counseling strategies and techniques that you can use at home. We have extraterrestrial radio where we deal with alienology, paranormal people, and we have an experiencers network. We have a section called Ancient Aliens, and the programs therein are Enki Speaks, Nimma, the Mother of Humanity, has her program, and we revise ancient anthropology. And most important of all, we have peace paradigms, because this is the age of peace. Harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding. No more falsehoods or derisions. Golden living dreams of visions, mystic crystal revelations, and the mind's true liberation.
This is Enki.
It is I who 300,000 years ago created your race, and 200,000 years ago, it was a lot of fun, made it even better with some of the pretty girls. And it is I who saved you from the flood, and it is I and my beloved Nimma and my son Ningashiga Thoth who are here to help you overcome my runaway son Marduk or Allah, my brother Enlil or Yahweh, and free yourself from all the supposed gods and recognize your own great potential. You have much to teach us, and we, Anunnaki, those of us from Nibiru, welcome full partnership.
And here are your hosts, Janet and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Aloha and welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. Good afternoon. This is Janet Kira Lesson, broadcasting live with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson from Maui, Hawaii. Today's show is Enki Speaks, and the title of today's show is Enlil Enki, God and Satan Make Up. I like to say God and Satan kissed and made up. The long title of today's show is Enki and Enlil Reconcile, Enlil Leaves, Enki Muses. This is Web Radio episode 35 of Enki Speaks from the Lost Book of Enki. And from the book he lost and Sitchin found is what Sasha's saying. And our website is EnkiSpeaks.com. EnkiSpeaks.com. You can see more articles and YouTube supporting material. And Dr. Lesson is a very prolific writer, so he just writes to educate everybody out there about the true history of humanity. So, once again, I am Janet Kira Lesson, and my co-host is anthropologist, has his PhD from UCLA in anthropology, Dr. Sasha Lesson. Take it away, sweetheart.
Okay, this is a real important chapter, the last part of the Book of Enki that we've been going through, the 35th episode, as a matter of fact. And just to bring you up to speed, this takes place after Enlil, also known as Yahweh, commander of the gold mining expedition from the planet Nibiru to Earth. So after this guy, Enlil, the commander, ordered that Sinai and the Dead Sea cities get bombed, nuclear destruction, but then the fallout from that blew all over Enlil's area in Sumer, except it didn't go over modern Baghdad, which is where Babili, Marduk's Enlil's rival Marduk had his place. So Babylon is its modern name is Baghdad, okay. And then in the time of Hammurabi it was Babylon, but in the time of Sumer it was called Babili.
Oh, Babili, okay.
Yeah. So once then the fallout had killed all of Enlil's areas in the old world off. At least in the Middle East, although he still had a lot of stuff going on top of the Andes. But Enlil ceded Earth's rule to Marduk. Okay, he gets to rule, in Turkey, Iraq, Iran area, and so forth. And so he gave up on it. I'm not going to bother about the Middle East. Give Iraqi to the Iraqis or something. Anyway, to Marduk, and so now Enlil, who later gets known as Yahweh, of course, makes up. He really puts his arm around, or actually accept that Enki puts his arm around Enlil. And Enki, remembers, Marduk's father, and he has really angered Enlil lots of times, especially by making these breedable hybrids. That's us, who Enlil kept trying to kill off. But finally now he's making peace, and that's what this episode's about.
Right. So you have to remember, listeners, that Enki and Enlil are brothers. I need that back. They're brothers, and they have been fighting now for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years at this point, over the rulership of the earth. And Enki has been made secondary to Enlil, so he's just focused on his scientific abilities and what he can create for his people, for both humanity and the Anunnaki. So we are going to read a bit from Zecharia Sitchin book, how he constructed the Lost Book of Enki from ancient sources. So reading from the Lost Book of Enki by the late, great Zecharia Sitchin. Some 445,000 years ago, astronauts from another planet came to Earth in search of gold. Splashing down in one of Earth's seas, they waded ashore, established Eridu. This initial settlement expanded to a full-fledged mission with a mission control center, a spaceport with mining operations, and even a way station on Mars. So we're finding all these ruins on Mars, and that's because the Anunnaki were there. So they were short of manpower, and the astronauts used genetic engineering to fashion primitive workers, which became Homo sapiens. And the deluge, which we know as Noah's Great Flood, eventually that it swept over the earth, required that we have a fresh start. So the astronauts became the gods, and they granted mankind civilization, and they started the practice of mankind worshipping the gods. So about 4,000 years ago, there was a nuclear calamity. Okay.
So the biblical tales that we get in our Bibles were based on texts written by the Sumerians, and they obtained their knowledge of past events from a time before civilization began, even before mankind came to be, from the writings of the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. That's who the gods of antiquity were.
So in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh was 3/4 god, one of the gods, it was disclosed the debate among the gods that led to the decision to let mankind perish in the deluge, the Great Flood, in a text called Atrahasis, which recalled the mutiny of the Anunnaki who had toiled in the gold mines that led to the creation of primitive workers, we earthlings. So these Anunnaki, these astronauts, themselves authored compositions, sometimes dictating the text to a chosen scribe, such as the Era Epos, in which one of the two gods who had caused a nuclear calamity sought to shift the blame to his adversary. Sometimes the god acted as his own scribe, as in the case regarding the book of the secrets of Thoth and Thoth. Thoth is Nigashita, the son of Enki. He was known as the Egyptian god of knowledge. So this god had secreted his book in a subterranean chamber. Okay. Hold on, we're going into the...
Tens of thousands of clay tablets have been discovered that show every aspect of daily life. It shows the trade, what they were, the workers' wages, everything like that. There was a canonized text, a secret literature written down in the Sumerian language and then translated to Akkadian, which was the first Semitic language, and then other ancient languages.
So the original recorder of the arrival on Earth, as well as the preceding events and following events, had to be one of those primary leaders, a key participant, an eyewitness.
We know who that was.
And we know that now. That is Enki. Hold on, I gotta sit in. We're reading from a book. It's a wonderful reference, not line for line, but just different pieces. So this witness, a key participant, was the leader had splashed down with the first group of astronauts. So his name at that time was Ea, he whose home is water. So he experienced the disappointment of having command of the Earth mission given to his half-brother and rival Enlil, E-N-L-I-L, which means Lord of the Command. So this was a great humiliation, and it was little mitigated by granting him the title of Enki, which means Lord of the Earth. Relegated away from the cities of the gods and their spaceports in the Eden, E-D-I-N, which we know as Eden, to supervise the mining of gold in the Absu, which is southeastern Africa. It was Enki, who was a great scientist, who came across the hominids who inhabited those parts of the world. And so when the Anunnaki toiling in the gold mines mutinied and said no more, it was Enki who realized that they needed manpower. The needed manpower could be obtained by jumping the gun on evolution through genetic engineering, and thus did the Adam, literally translated to mean he of the earth, an earthling. And you have to get this. Enki was given the title Lord of the Earth, but Earth has his original name Ea. So the Earth our planet is named after Enki, Earth. So he created Earthlings, and they came into being as a result of genetic engineering, which we now today have these capabilities to create hybrids. As a hybrid, the Adam could not procreate, and so the events echoed in the biblical tale of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden record the second genetic manipulation by Enki that added the extra chromosomal genes needed for sexual procreation. And then when mankind began proliferating, did not turn out the way that it had been envisaged, it was he, Enki, who defied his brother Enlil's plan to let mankind perish in the deluge, the great flood.
The firstborn son of Anu, Nibiru's ruler, Ea Enki, was well versed in Nibiru's history, and he was an accomplished scientist. He bequeathed the most important aspects of the advanced knowledge of the Anunnaki, especially to his two sons, Marduk and Ningishita, who, as Egyptian gods, Marduk and Ningishita were known as Ra and Thoth. But Enki also was instrumental in sharing with mankind advanced knowledge, teaching individuals secrets. Two initiates wrote down these divine teachings as mankind's heritage. One was called Adapa. Adapa was a son of Enki by a human female. Adapa is known to have written a book called Writings Regarding Time. The other who wrote down this advanced knowledge was Enmeduranki. Let me say Enmeduranki. So let's see. Enmeduranki. So that's the other writer. Anyway, we know Enmeduranki in the Bible is Enoch. And he was taken up to the sky to heaven after he had entrusted to his sons the book of divine secrets. And that's the extra-biblical book of Enoch.
Though the firstborn of Anu, he was not destined to be his father's successor on the throne of Nibiru. So we're talking about Enki. So there were complex rules of succession, which gave that privilege. It's resulted after this long, convoluted history of the Nibirans, which we'll cover in another episode, gave that privilege to Enki's half-brother, Enlil. So in an effort to resolve this conflict, this bitter conflict, both Enki and Enlil ended up on a mission to this alien planet to them, because their home planet was Nibiru, which we already know became known as Earth. The original name for Earth was Ki. And Earth, they needed the gold from Earth to create a shield for preserving Nibiru's dwindling atmosphere. So against this background, made even more complex by the presence on Earth of their half-sister. This is the half-sister of both Enki and Enlil. Her name is Ninharsog. She's the chief medical officer of the Anunnaki. Her name when she was younger is Ninmah. So Enki decided to defy Enlil's plan to have mankind perish in the deluge, in the Great Flood. This conflict carried on between the two half-brothers' sons, even down to generations to their grandchildren. The fact that all of them, and especially those born on Earth, faced the loss of longevity that Nibiru's extended orbital period provided, added personal agonies and sharpened ambitions. It all came to a climax in the last century of the 3rd millennium BC, when Marduk, Enki's firstborn son by his official spouse, claimed that he and not Enlil's firstborn son Ninurta, who is the child of Enlil and Ninharsog. So this Ninurta was going to inherit the earth, and this led to wars, and which led to the end use of nuclear weapons. And the unintended result was the demise of Sumerian civilization. Okay, so let's see, fated Earth. Okay, Earth. What was destined and could not have been avoided, and what was just fated as a consequence of right or wrong decisions and free choice. The latter could not be predicted. The former could be foreseen, especially if at all. What are we talking about? It's kind of out of context here. What happened on the
They're trying to figure out
what happened on Earth. Enki and Enlil began to ponder philosophically what indeed was destined and what could have been avoided, and what was just fated as a consequence of right or wrong decisions. What was free choice? The latter could not be predicted. The former could not be foreseen. Could be foreseen. So, especially if, after all, as the planetary orbits was cyclical, if what was shall be again be, if the first thing shall also be the last thing. So, if the past, the future is fated. They were pondering what is fate and what is destiny, and what can be changed and what is set in stone.
So, after all is said and done, we have a first-hand report that Enki himself wrote. He recorded his autobiography, stretching over at least 12 tablets, and they were discovered in a library at Nippur. The long text describes how Ea Enki assigned tasks to his lieutenants, putting their mission to Earth in motion. In other texts, we can complete, Sitchin says, Enki's tale, a cosmogony, an epic of creation known as the Eridu Genesis, has descriptions of the fashioning of Adam, how Anunnaki, male and female, came to Enki in his city Eridu to obtain from him the MEs, a data disk that encoded all aspects of civilization, and how these included texts of Enki's private life and personal problems, such as the tale of his attempts to attain a son by his half-sister Ninhursag, his promiscuous affairs with both goddesses and the daughters of man. The Atrahasis throws light on Anu's efforts to prevent a flare-up of the Enki-Enlil rivalries by dividing Earth's domains between them.
So, for the first time ever, this dispersed and fragmented material has been assembled and used by Zecharia Sitchin to recreate this eyewitness the account of Enki. So this book, The Lost Book of Enki, is the autobiographical memoirs and insightful prophecies of an extraterrestrial god. Is that a good place to break? Okay, but one more thing.
So in dealing with the past, Enki perceived the future. The notion that the Anunnaki, exercising free will, were masters of their own fates, as well as the fate of mankind, gave way in the end to a realization that it was destiny that determined the course of events.
So in the preceding episode, we went through ancient history from 450,000 years ago to the time after the nuking of Sinai.
That's 1 through 34. It's all there on our site, www.enkispeaks.com.
So after this short break, we will read Tablet 14, where Enki and Enlil realized that that everything that transpired was influenced by this mystery being, Galzu, who is part of the Federation's. He's a Federation agent. There's a indication that there was indeed a Federation of planets. So, Gene Roddenberry was right. Galzu was an emissary of the Federation.
He was Q.
He's the Q. If you want to have, and so we've been given these hints through our science fiction about what actually happened. So we're going to take a little short break here, a couple minutes. I'm going to play a fun song for you called Off Rhythm by A Crowning Experience. So we'll be right back. Aloha! Welcome back to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. Once again, this is Enki Speaks. This is our show today. The title is Enlil Enki. God and Satan make up. They kiss and make up. And we're going to go into that a little bit more. Wanted to just give a plug for our book. We have a wonderful book that Dr. Lesson has written and I helped compile called Anunnaki, Gods No More. And if you go to our website, enkispeaks.com, you can click there and purchase it, and that would really help us a lot. We're bringing this information to you to help free us from the God spell, which keeps us into slave mentality, lack consciousness, and feeling separate and divided from each other. So that's a little bit of a commercial here from me. I wanted to just, before we go to this last part, this is actually my favorite part of the whole story. I think this part of the Lost Book of Enki by Zecharia Sitchin, and we're not reading it exactly. We're just kind of summarizing certain things. Cause
we're going to read this part exactly.
And we're going to read this pretty much exactly because it's very short. But God was, through our research and other people's research in this Anunnaki studies field, God is Yahweh, who is Jehovah. And you have to realize that God...
Except for when it's